Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we'll explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. I am honored to be sitting here with a professional colleague and new friend of mine here in Sacramento, Katrina Kennedy, and very excited to hear what her story is today and to bring her to all of you so that you can hear her story. So, Katrina, I'm going to shut up and let you introduce yourself. So tell us, how would you like to be known and anything else about yourself you'd like to share?
Awesome. So thanks for having me, Paul. I love the idea of your 3 to 5 words. So my words are connector, creator, mom, and probably most important, human.
Nice.
And as you know, I spend my time training trainers and training subject matter experts how to train their peers. And that's going to drive much of our conversation today.
Okay. I'm excited to hear, and I'm excited to hear more about these different words that you describe yourself, kind of roles and just kind of ways of being, particularly this connector theme too. I'm curious to see how that shows up. Katrina, let's start with intentions. What would be your intention for yourself for today's conversation?
My intention is really to get off my comma. I've been sitting on it for a very long time. I have tried I've tried many, many different techniques to give me that nudge. And this is probably the most public, the biggest way. And I'm hoping it'll give me that nudge.
I like that because, sometimes people will tell stories in retrospect. Oh, this is a time when, and sometimes people will show up and say, hey, I'm sitting on a comma. And it sounds like that's where you are today. And those stories and experiences really intrigue me because I like to kind of see where it's going and how it's unfolding. And who knows what may show up for you today just in the telling of the story, because there's power in that.
Yeah, I'm nervous and excited, but I think there's also potential.
And you're doing it scared, or doing it nervous, as you said. So that is a great thing to show up as, because that supports one of my intentions for this podcast and for our episode today, is that somebody out there will hear your story and perhaps be inspired by your experience and see some possibility for themselves, and that in telling the story, it creates possibility for you that maybe you hadn't seen before.
Maybe.
Nice.
I feel like we're getting that moment you're on a roller coaster and you're waiting for it to start. If we just keep talking, then maybe it won't start and it won't be scary.
But meanwhile, you hear, and as you know from working with me too, you're hearing the tick, 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 tick.
I know what's coming.
Yeah. And there's a thrill and an exhilaration in there. Well, there is for me, at least. I don't know about you. I can't speak for you.
I think there could be, or, nausea. So we'll see.
Well, then let's do see, right? Let's jump in. As you already know, and I like to mention, in each episode, I ask every guest the same 5 questions, and that provides a framework for us. And we'll let the conversation unfold wherever it takes us within the context of those 5 questions. And as I say in every episode, you haven't shared with me what you're going to be talking about. So this is completely unrehearsed for you and completely new for me, which is what allows this to unfold organically. And I love that part. And I'll also preface too, there may be points in time in your story, Katrina, where, I'm going to let you tell the story. It's yours. But there may be points in time where I'm like, hey, can I step in on that real quick? Because there may be something that I heard that was interesting that I felt like, hey, let's dig into it a little bit more or what have you. So if I do, let's be honest, if I interrupt, then it was partly with intention and with good spirit. So
I look forward to your interruptions, Paul.
Okay. Let's jump in with the first question. So where have you found yourself sitting on a comma in your life? Tell us a little bit about it.
So I have written 3 complete books that happen to be sitting on the shelf beside me, but they have never gone beyond my safe space. They have value, I believe, and I've found every reason to not share them, to not publish them, to just let them sit and stagnate.
So you've used a couple of words here. So let me reflect back a little of what I'm hearing you say. So you have created these 3 books, and then they're sitting there. You haven't published them. You haven't put them out into the world, and you used the word safe, staying in my safe space, and then you used the word stagnate, which was interesting. What made you choose those 2 words in particular amongst everything you shared?
So I think the safety is, putting my ideas out there and everything that might bring, both positive and negative. The idea that I might put a book out there that no one sees value in or even mocks. And then on the flip side of that I might put a book out there and it suddenly requires things from my life that I hadn't thought of, whether that's more work or different work or somehow changing my work and my time. And then as far as stagnate, that's really about the book itself. Because these 3 books, I wrote the first one 18 years ago. I've been carrying them around. They've been moved a couple of times. The most recent one I finished in October. Well, finished is not maybe the right word, but I wrote the bulk of. And so the longer they sit, the more the ideas seem old, the more the ideas seem irrelevant, and the more justification I create for them not going anywhere.
I hear you describing initially when you started talking about that, this unknown, right? The unknown. Will people find value, or will it then create something new in my life that I wasn't prepared for or didn't picture or anticipate? So this element of unknown, and 18 years in one case.
Yeah. And, and I've been trying to unpack this for 18 years. Like, what's holding me back? Like, why? Because I am not a person who sits on many commas. And in fact, I probably should have a few more commas that I sit on from time to time, some pauses, maybe. I tend to push things out into the world and then let happen what will happen. And this really, I think, speaks to things. And this was my hesitancy in sharing this particular one with you. This speaks to my childhood. This speaks to like 2 big things that define me kind of as a person. I knew I'd get emotional. I wasn't sure when I'd get emotional.
Yeah. And yet this is very meaningful for you. So I invite you to experience whatever emotions you're feeling. Stay with it and tell us a little bit more about it. Yeah.
So, as a kid, I have a congenital heart defect. I'm born with it, live with it. I've had a couple of open heart surgeries because of it. So I'm very aware of my own mortality, right? And as a kid, because I had a heart issue, that meant that I became an avid user of the library. Words have such value and meaning to me. And so my goal as a kid, as like this 7 or 8-year-old kid, was like, I want my own book. I want my own book. I told my 3rd grade teacher, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to dedicate it to you, Mrs. King. And she absolutely was like, yes, you are, and totally supported it. And the other part of my childhood, though, says like, who are you to put anything out to the world? Who are you? And those are that's the part of my own existence that, I've gone to therapy over, I've tested relationships over, I've really, tried to deal with. And then we come to this one thing that I so want. And it's like these 2 kids are fighting each other. Like, nope, you you don't get to do that, even though it's the thing you really want to do. I'm so glad that this is not video right now.
I'm laughing with you, my friend. And I just want to acknowledge you for being able to say that, to let that out, because what I've heard you say is a couple of things. Just a sidetrack, just for a moment here, is you brought up this concept of there are comma collectors and comma investors. Like some people have a lot of commas. You specifically said, I don't have a lot of commas. I was like, ooh, some people collect commas. I think I'm a comma collector. You said, no, I put things out in the world. But it sounds like maybe when you do have a comma, you invest in it. And it's a big one, right?
Long term.
Yeah. But what I also hear you say is that this one isn't just about the books. There's something more at play here. Well, let's take it deeper with question 2, because it's kind of like a bridge question, but it opens up the door for a lot of things. You said, I don't know why. Let's set aside the why for just a second. What is sitting on this comma creating for you?
Well, at the very simplest, there is this childhood dream that isn't being realized. Mm-hmm. And then from a very practical perspective, it's holding back something that I really want to do. Like, I really want to speak more at conferences and professional, gatherings. Most of what I do now is with a group of 20 to 25 trainers. And I want to just add to that professionally. And
can I step in for just a moment?
Yeah.
And I want to acknowledge for everybody listening, and you literally just came back from a big conference, and I believe that room size was a couple of hundred. Is that correct?
It was 167. 167. Okay. Yeah. So yes, 200. Close enough. Exactly. And, and it's something that happened at that event. So it was the Association of Talent Development's international conference. And so I'm in this room with 167 people. The session's going beautifully. It was just like one of those days where everything fit together, and the room is really long. Mm-hmm. And I went to the back of the room while the group is working on something. And a woman at the table at the very back looked at me and said, "Do you have a book?" And it was this moment of like, I don't know how to respond. I'm like, well, yes, but. And after coming back from that conference and being asked that more than once, which was just on one hand really empowering and felt like, yes, like they want something from me. And on the other hand, just really, made me face the comma, right? But then I came back and I had sent a couple of proposals to a few other conferences, and I came back to 2 rejections, just like outright. And I know, because I don't have that book, because I don't have that thing, because I don't have that other piece of this puzzle, that's holding me back. And that's going to take away some of the possibilities. And I'm not saying that as an excuse, even. Like, I know that that's how that industry works. Mm-hmm. And to say nothing of the fact that when you speak at conferences like ATD's conference and many of the others that are similar to that, they don't pay you. You're on your dime. And so it doesn't even make sense to not have this book, because that's where you offset that. And sometimes work is produced as a result of the interactions, of course. Yeah. So yes, I'm doing it, but I'm not going to be able to do it as much, I think, if I don't have that extra, if I don't have the physical book.
Yeah. And let's acknowledge something there too, right? Like, going a little coachy with you here. Like, on the one hand, I could challenge and say, well, that's a story you tell yourself. You've said basically that it sounded like you were conflating the rejection letters with not having a book. You didn't say that. I inferred that. But then you did say, like, this is going to limit me. So on the one hand, there's a story that says, if I don't have the book, I'm not going to have as many options. So let's acknowledge that as a story. And as a belief. If that's true for you, then it's true. And yet, what I think, and you correct me if this is a misstatement, is that supporting an intention in you that says, I want to have these books out there. And you have the books. They're just not out there. So let me ask this next question, and this is still kind of in the what's this creating for you vein. If the books are done, what's keeping you from putting them out there?
That is the question, Paul. That is the question. I think that I've told myself, in the vein of storytelling, I've told myself 15 different stories. One, they need more editing, and the next might be that, well, it's not focused enough. They're not relevant enough. It's not shiny enough. It's already been done. So I have a whole slew of reasons. I don't know what the real reason is, other than that, that little kid still saying that, who am I to put something out there?
Well, and it's a great example of how, those sabotaging voices or those inner critics come with us from our childhood. So this is important, right? Mm-hmm. That you bridged it back to, this is young Katrina talking to me. And we don't have to go into a therapy space to talk about this, although that's a great place to talk about it, right? Because in therapy, for those who haven't taken advantage of therapy before, I certainly have, you acknowledged it, you get into the root causes. We can also look at, okay, so young Katrina is saying things to hold her back. Maybe it's there to protect her or what have you. But if we set aside the why is this happening or why am I not doing it, set aside for a moment, because you've got all the reasons why you haven't done it. You've got all the excuse, all those things. So that feels complete. Like all the reasons not to do it feels like a complete stack, right? Let's go into the space of why should you do it, or why would you want to do it? Like, what would happen for you if you did do it? What would you gain? What does it look like for you to be a published author? Tell those stories for a minute.
And those stories just feel like they should be compelling enough, because I want to hold it. I want to hold it physically. Like, I don't even know that I care if anyone ever buys it. Mm-hmm. I want to hold it. I want to open it up. I want to see the dedication. I want to see the paper. I want to feel it. I want it to sit on the library shelf and be something that I can find. I want to go to Powell's bookstore in Portland, Oregon, and go to the business section and look under learning and development and see it. I want my
take your time. This is, well, if I may give you a moment, you're very clear on what you see. And I hear you describing this very visually. You're talking about touch and sight and being able to see it. Like you said, the meaning isn't so much fame or the, millions of copies. Like I want to touch it and hold it. I want to see it in a particular place. And I suspect you're about to share something that's very meaningful for you.
Yeah, if I can get it out. Because it's interesting. I started to say that I want my son to see it and hold it. My son has struggled with dyslexia. So reading, writing, very difficult. We've been through a lot. And in some ways, I held off many times because of my priority was his success. Mm-hmm. But as I started to say that to you, I realized that no, I want my mom and dad to hold this. And then the next thing that came is and suddenly I probably should be in therapy with this, Paul. And, there's always that question of what's therapy, what's coaching, right? Mm-hmm.
Set aside the shoulds and just tell your story right now.
I feel like I have something to prove to them. They're not the kind of parents that have ever needed me to prove anything at all. But that's what came to mind, is that I need them to acknowledge who I am and the knowledge that I have and the the career that I've developed. So that was unexpected.
Yeah. It seems as though you've opened another door into the what might be holding me back. You didn't necessarily say that was the thing, but you said the thing that I want, the outcome that I want is this physical product that I can touch and feel, this placement of this product where I can see it living, and the people that I want to be able to see it, hold it, acknowledge it, experience it. And that's one is your son and one is your parents. So what's important to you about your parents acknowledging you through this book?
So I was really different than my siblings. I am really different than my siblings. Mm-hmm. I was the first one in my family to go to college, and my parents couldn't really relate to that. I grew up in an area that education was not necessarily highly regarded. It's an area that people talked about people with their book learning. And as someone who invested my life at the public library as a kid, I spent hours there, and it opened up all these worlds. That having a book kind of just makes sense to me. Like it's something I need. And I hadn't really thought about the fact that I have something to prove. I haven't felt that way until you and I've had this conversation. And I guess there's risk in that. I mean, I'm not sure what the risk is. And all of a sudden my brain is muddied too.
Yeah. Well, and that's okay. Like, let it be muddied, because what I believe I'm seeing in your telling of this story is that some new things have come to light, some new insights, right? And if I can kind of go sideways just slightly in a contextual way, this is one of the beautiful things that can come from sitting on a comma. Now, you mentioned you've been sitting on this comma for a while. And a lot of times when people talk about being stuck in life, all the attention and energy gets put on to, getting unstuck as fast as I can. Where am I going? What am I getting? What's next? And so on and so forth. And we can often overlook the purpose that sitting on that comma can serve, right? And so, what's actually happening where you are? What are you noticing? What are you experiencing? What is life bringing to you that needs you to be on pause about something, right? And so here you are, like, this has been something you've been sitting on for a while, and now you're having this conversation. Now there's something new that's coming up, something that's unpacking, right? So just being in the stuck place sometimes can have its own version of value and things that it's bringing to you. So because you said that, I guess I'm going to go right into this next question, and we'll bob and weave here or bounce back and forth. But so what are you learning about yourself from sitting on this comma? Sounds like you're learning some things right now, but I'll just open it up.
Yeah, I think, I'm learning that a lot of the things that I felt like I had resolved from growing up, a lot of the things that I really thought I had moved beyond and understood and had compartmentalized into some, place in my past, they're a little bit closer to the surface than I realized. Maybe when we do the hard work to better ourselves as humans, that work doesn't have a finish line. And I think maybe I thought that I had reached the finish line. That was ancient history, so move forward. And obviously it hasn't. I mean, I haven't, and I won't. I still wonder. Like, what is at the root of that? And maybe that's the wrong question. And maybe what I'm learning about myself is that I'm trying to figure out the why, and maybe the why doesn't matter this time. What maybe really matters this time is just getting off of it and move on and let it present what it presents, because I don't think it's going to present anything horrible. Like, what horrible thing is going to happen? Like, somebody approaches me and says, hey, I want you to speak at this event, and it conflicts with something else in my life, and I say no. Like, I can look at that situation and like, that one's solvable, that one's easy. Like I said earlier, like I don't sit on commas, so I just need to get the hell off of this one.
This is really powerful, what you've shared. And again, I want to acknowledge you and thank you for your bravery in putting this out there. And I can see how much this means to you. And there's like just so much powerful energy that's coming out of what you're sharing here. You just said something that like people will pay good money hiring coaches to come to this. And you said, maybe it's not about the why at all. And it's interesting. This is just my kind of own little take on it, right? Like, I'm just sitting over here as another listener, like, ooh, what would that mean for me? And it's like, this is clearly about more than just the book. The book is definitely its own symbol of something for you, and it's very important for you. I mean, you've made that very clear. And yet there's also some lesson in the pages of this book or wherever it is you're going with this. And what you just said is, maybe it's not about the why at all. Maybe it's time to just take action and get it moving. And what if that is the point? Right. What if that was the lesson, right? This is something coaches won't do, which is interject in there, but we're telling stories, right? What if that is the lesson, is you had this lesson to put something in front of you that you weren't supposed to figure out or didn't have to figure out?
Right. And I think I've been using figuring it out as the excuse. And
oh my God. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I do that.
Right. Like, how many more books do I need? I had myself convinced about a year ago that I needed a PhD. I can't put this book out unless I have a PhD. Mm-hmm. Like, how ridiculous is that? Like, what other validation? Okay, there's the big word, right? What other validation do I need to grab? I knew you were going to.
I'm going to stop you right there, my friend. Why because you physically stopped? Listeners can't see that, but you stopped, and then you said, wow, that's a big word. What happened for you right there?
Well, because I think that's it. Like, that I need, oh gosh, suddenly, like, this is replacing therapy, Paul. I feel like I need validation in order to put this out. So if somebody came to me tomorrow and said, Katrina, we want your book, we're going to publish it, I'd be like, oh, heck yeah, let's go for it. And I would feel like that was enough. Like, I have been looking for the validation. I've been looking for the person who will step into my office and discover the unknown book and say, let's put it out there. And
well, what you've also said is, I've been waiting for somebody else to make me do it.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm loving this conversation, by the way. And I'm like, oh, that's not quite fitting the questions, but you know what it is? Let's don't force it. So you literally came here and said, I'm sitting on a comma, not I had a comma. Let me tell you the story. It's like, I'm sitting on a comma. So you are processing in real time, right? So,
right.
So let's go with this next question then. Instead of asking what has changed, what's changing for you as a result of sitting on this comma?
I think that the big change is the realization that I just need to take action. I need to stop looking for validation. I need to stop looking for more information to make me feel better about what the ideas I have put together. I need to have the confidence to do this, which is a bizarro thing for me to say, because I'm pretty darn confident in most of my life.
You even said, I don't sit on commas. I make things happen.
Right. Like,
what will this do for you? This is an important question, I think, because you said, okay, what I'm learning is I need to do it. I need to just have the confidence, make it happen, take actions. Maybe some of those are my own words, not yours, but what will that do for you? What will it bring you to approach this situation from that point of view?
I think it will bring me the tools that I use, to the tools and the action that I use in all of the other parts of my life. Like, get this on a timeline, get this on a list, get this on somebody else's desk, not my own. Like, Oh, Paul.
Say it. Say it.
I just, it requires me to ask for help.
Okay. You haven't mentioned this yet.
I
What does that
know. I
mean?
haven't. I haven't.
What does that mean to ask for help?
That means like I need somebody else to do this. Like, and okay, there's probably the root of everything. Um, I'm not a good help asker. And I could do this alone. I could self-publish, which I've spent lots of time and money looking at that path.
I'm going to step in on that one because we can go down the path of, well, I should and shouldn't and so forth. And so I'm just going to preempt that. What do you want to do?
I want to publish this through a real publisher. I want to have their validation on it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to their website and see it. I want that thing, that the 7-year-old Katrina related to when she went to the library or the bookstore.
Yeah. Well, and you were very clear about that. You didn't pause. You didn't hesitate. You said exactly what it is you wanted. And then I really love how you bridged it back to that's what 7-year-old Katrina wants too. So interesting that 7-year-old Katrina has been kind of holding you back for a while, but now you know what she wants.
Yeah.
How does that feel to say that?
To say it just then feels good. But I think I have to even go back further than that. And there have been a couple of moments where I feel some clarity and just some drive that I don't need to wait for validation. I just don't need to wait anymore. Because if I sit down and have a conversation with someone, Paul, I mean, look at everything it brings up. Like, and so I'm carrying this, even if I'm not acknowledging it. And I'd rather not carry this.
Mm-hmm.
The world has enough for us to carry. Like, I could let this go and let it go into the world. I know that it has value, even though like I question it and it goes on the list of excuses. I know in my heart that it has value. And if nothing else, it has value to me.
This is interesting. I want to reflect that back to you because so two things. One, you basically just talked yourself out of one of your doubts that you had earlier in our conversation, which was, oh, I'm not sure if it has value. You sound very clear that it does have value. And that even the way you described what would it look like if you said, oh, I want to be able to touch it. I want to hold it. I'm not as concerned about how many people. There's some specific people that I want to see it. There's a specific place I want it to be in, and I want to be able to touch it. So you just said, like, it's really more valuable to me. And I'm also hearing you say, well, no, I'm going to stop right there because I'm going to go into the next question, which is really cool because these aren't coaching sessions, right? Like, yes, I'm a coach and yes, I'll ask the questions and reflect back and so forth. But because you're sitting on this comment and because of how this conversation unfolded, I'm going to ask this next question and give you free reign. It's entirely up to you. I never have any expectations, but if you want to make a declaration, then you can to however many, dozens to thousands of people might hear this, right? But so what does getting off this comma look like for you?
The word that came to my mind almost instantly was relief. Relief. It also looks like some work. I think, and I don't think I'm afraid of that work. But it definitely looks like relief, and it looks like a whole new path that I get to take. Kind of an adventure I get to go on that I'm excited for. It's just this little space in between. It's that comma space, right? It's just that spot. And it also looks like, and I'm going to circle back and use the word because it came to mind. It looks like validation of my career. It looks like the 26 years I have spent in learning and development as, touching people's lives and connecting people to ideas and helping them improve their organizations. It kind of puts the seal of approval on it. But, like, look at what I've done.
And what I see in that is that it validates it for you, if for no one else.
Right.
Yeah. And isn't that really what matters?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, I think I've been searching for this external validation and this external, approval. And I just need to step up and give it to myself.
Oh, wow. That's powerful. And I see you getting emotional again too. Something, and when I see someone getting emotional and feeling feelings, we know there's a huge spectrum, but that just tells me that something really resonated for you when you said that. Like that, you had a feel something important. Care to share what that is?
Yeah. So I have this tattoo. People are always surprised because I'm not like a tattoo-y kind of person, whatever that means, because it's just ink. But I have this tattoo on my wrist, and it says be kind. And it's backwards. It's when I had it done, the artist said, that's we usually don't put them that way. And I said, well, but I need to see it.
Mm.
I didn't even really think about other people seeing it because it was very much for me. And I think that getting off of this comma looks like the ultimate kindness to myself because it will be me acknowledging, admitting, saying, that I am good enough. I am smart enough. I do know enough. And as I say that to you, there's this other voice in my head that's like, oh, could you be any more stereotyped? Could you be any more ridiculous and like everyone else? But I guess it's those are words that so many of us say because I think so many of us grapple with that.
And it's there, and it's okay to acknowledge it. It becomes, the work comes in terms of do you want to engage with it, right? And in coaching, we talk about, don't engage with the sabotaging voice. You can acknowledge it, you can give it a name, you can see it in the room. But when you engage in the dialogue with it, that's when it wins and it takes over. I want to bring you back to what you said that seems really powerful and shines through this whole conversation as a thread, which is it's for me.
Right.
It's for me. I think that's beautiful. And it seems that it always was, because you knew that when you got the tattoo, you knew that when you did all these things that you've described and shared with us in your life. So it just seems like it's really powerful and beautiful for you to be able to sit here and say, yeah, it's for me. It always was. Yeah. One observation, if I may, when you said, I need help, one of the things you've been carrying this, you said yourself, I've been carrying this. I've been doing this myself. And as long as I'm carrying it, I also have the option to put it down, which you also said you've done. So perhaps getting help will bring you that level of accountability that takes the decision out of your hands now. Like you literally can take a partner to help you carry it forward.
Right.
Yeah. This is awesome. I love every bit of this story. You told me before we started recording that, oh yeah, there's going to be a part of this that will resonate with you. And it absolutely does. If I may just, even the validation piece, like you said, like needing to prove yourself, like it's okay. If you're clear on your intentions and what the reasons you're doing it. I mean, I got into my career and never even had a college degree. And during the pandemic, I'm like, I'm going to finish my damn bachelor's degree, right? And it wasn't because I was going to get a better job or get more salary. Just wanted to do it for me. I needed to prove it for me. And I was going through coach training. So I knew all the whole challenge the belief and It's like, I want this. It's just as simple as that. I just want it.
Right. There doesn't have to be a why.
Yeah. It sounds like you're clear on what you want. My coach trainer, Cammie McLaren, hashtag plug for you, Cammie, said something to me. Or said something to all of us. We were about halfway through our coach training and we were literally like wrapping up a day's worth of training. And, it was the whole people were shuffling and getting things and things were getting handed out and stuff like that. And somebody said something and she's like, oh, it sounds like that's important to you. It's, I'm keeping it a secret or whatever. And she literally just said it out loud. She wasn't speaking to anyone in particular. She's like, if you've been harboring a secret or if there's some big goal that you wanted to do and you've been keeping to yourself, She said, declare it. She said, say it out loud and say it to as many people as possible. And do you know that was 1 month before I declared to all 30 of those coaches that I was quitting drinking for the rest of my life? I heard that loud and clear. So is there anything you would declare with all of us today, Katrina?
I think, Paul, that I have to declare that I'm finishing this book. I'm getting this book out into the world. It's out there.
I wish everybody could see you. You're grinning, you're nodding.
With a really red nose, though.
That's okay. It's your red nose, and it's part of who you are. It's powerful. I'm not going to press you. I'll wait until we stop recording, and I'm going to press you for the by when and how and to whom and all that good stuff. I'll push you for an official declaration, but I won't do that on the recording.
Thank you,
I
Paul.
would like to, as we land the plane, though, ask you a question, and then we'll do some acknowledgments, or rather, some how can people find you? But first, what would you acknowledge yourself for from this conversation?
I think, I started with the word that I'm human, and I think maybe I'm going to acknowledge my humanity.
I will see your acknowledgement and raise you. Like the answers are within you. They always are, right? And I see a courageous person who can see what she's working with and see what she wants and see the struggle that she's been in and allow herself to come to the place that she got to, that you got to, and to be able to make a declaration the way you have. That takes guts.
Awesome. Nice. And Paul, I have this vision that I have to share with you that I want to come back and have the off the comma conversation.
Okay.
Since this was like on the comma conversation.
The answer is yes, absolutely yes. And potentially a reframe. Like we don't just celebrate the getting what you want here. Like honestly, like what you brought us is really what I want to create, is to show people that there's a million different ways you can be in the process, and there's a million different ways you come to getting off the combo, whatever that looks like, right? It's all part of the journey. And you very much painted a very rich and powerful and meaningful journey for us.
Thank you.
Katrina, how can people find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn as Katrina Kennedy Training, and my website, katrinakennedy.com.
Awesome. And I will, of course, put this in the show notes so it's easy for people to find. And as I've done with other guests, because I believe in this space for you to tell your story and also to be able to support others and tell other people's stories if it helps boost them up as well. So I think you've got a couple of organizations or individuals or institutions that you would like to acknowledge and potentially prop up. What are those?
Absolutely. So the first one is the public library. It saved me as a kid. It continues to save and enrich me. And so, go to your library, borrow books, nice. Use them. It's an amazing resource. The other is specifically for kids, but it's brought me so much as well. And that's 916 Inc. It's a Sacramento-based organization that helps kids write and publishes them, gets them their books before they're, my age, which is more than 7. And they just do really beautiful work. And then the last one is an organization that I have to mention because they have supported me, even though I don't technically fit in their organization yet, and that is the Nonfiction Authors Association. They have been a great source of information about publishing. They've been a great source of many, searches as I put off the inevitable. But they also have great information. So really, really have benefited from them.
Well, and I just want to push back a little bit, as I do. It says Nonfiction Authors Association, not Published People's Association. So I think it sounds like you very much do fit in with them. So you are an author, Katrina. You are a writer. You are a creator. So I want to acknowledge that. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you so much for just putting your story authentically out there and making your experience available for others to see and to witness. I just know that this will have power for people out there, for someone out there at least, and hopefully that this has been a rewarding experience for you as well. It sounds like it.
Absolutely, Paul. Absolutely. I appreciate you and I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's really important for all of us.
Nice. Thank you for that. Well, I'm here to do the work with all of you as well. So have a wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend this weekend in Sacramento this summer. And you and I will be talking again soon.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
What an honor it is to witness these stories from these amazing human beings, and today's guest was no exception. I invite you to think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. I can't tell you how magical it can be to set aside your expectations and just let your thoughts flow out of your head and onto paper. You don't have to have an agenda. You don't have to do anything with it, but you can be amazed at what comes out of your thoughts and onto paper and what that can do for you. I know freestyle journaling has been a powerful practice in my life for a very long time. You just never know what you might discover about yourself. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. Follow me on social media at Off the Comma, and also look for upcoming workshops and events at offthecomma.com, or better yet, go to offthecomma.com and sign up for my mailing list and let me bring the news directly to you. I am passionate about keeping this podcast ad-free so that we create a safe container for people to be able to tell their stories uninterrupted by commercials and promotions. I currently cover all the production costs, and I'm happy to continue doing so. And I'm also open to and appreciative of any donations that anyone would like to contribute. This is nothing more than to be able to support the podcast and cover some of the monthly editing and producing and equipment costs that are associated with this podcast. So it is strictly to cover production costs. It is not expected, but it is certainly welcomed and appreciated. So look for the donations link in the podcast descriptions wherever you find this podcast. Again, not expected, but certainly appreciated to cover just the cost of production. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast, and more importantly, spread the good word. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. As always, keep noticing.